Hello, YouTube. Today I will tell you more about Alexander the Great and some of the mysteries about his life that are not widely known. My interest in Alexander the Great is largely because of the book by Ivan Yefremov, whom I mentioned before. This was the great Soviet scientist, author, and thinker, and more than that, as I told you in my videos, the KGB actually suspected him to be an alien, and there was quite a large operation to keep him under surveillance. And you can see my videos about Ivan Yefremov and what the KGB did, and still inaccessible criminal case files against him, although there is no more Soviet Union. And you can see my other videos about Alexander the Great and again, some of the more mystical or mysterious aspects of his life that come from sources that few in the West know about. I've been to Africa trying to find traces of what Yefremov said about Alexander the Great in Southwest Africa a long time ago. It's fascinating. And also India comes into play. So let me start. Alexander the Great is one of the most famous and great generals and conquerors of the world. This extraordinary person is connected with India not only by his famous Indian campaign, to which he was pushed by amazing stories about the fabulous riches of this distant land, but also by a lesser-known fact, namely communication with certain naked ascetic yogi and obtaining secret knowledge from them. It is known that Alexander received a deep philosophical education from his mentor Aristotle, and therefore, unlike other conquerors of antiquity, he was probably more interested in exploring the mysteries of this world. So, mysterious naked sages, who were they? During his stay in Taxila, the capital of the ancient Indian Gandhar people in Punjab, which at that time was a center of scholarship and education, Alexander first encountered naked monks and ascetics. The Greeks and subsequently the entire Western world called them gymnosophists, which roughly translates as naked philosophers or naked sages. There has been much debate about the identity of these ascetics. Ascetic is a person who practices severe self-discipline and abstention. Some call them hermits too, but I think there is a little bit of difference. Initially, it was assumed that these were Digamabara Jain monks, meaning clothed in light, who consider clothing and even food obstacles to achieving purity of thought and enlightenment. However, this was debunked based on the incident, which I will return to later. Therefore, until additional evidence is found, it is impossible to establish their religious affiliation with certainty. These philosophers could be anyone and belong to any sect or religion in India. They could have been Ajivikas or Vedic rishis or even Buddhists who prevailed in northwestern India at that time. I have an idea too, but I will mention it later. In Greek literature, they're generally compared to the Chaldeans of the Assyrians or Babylonians, to the Persian magicians, the Druids of the Celts, and even the priests of ancient Egypt. Some Brahmin sects belonging to Hinduism also walked naked, living in forests, practiced austerities, shaved their heads, ate only fruits and milk, and meditated. As for the Ajivic sect, they also went without clothing, as did the Nagasadu a military order of naked ascetic warriors. There was another similar order whose members were called shramans, or forest hermits. The gymnosophists could well belong to that order. Anyway, the names of several such ascetics who had a personal influence on Alexander have come down to us. However, one of them was called Kalanos by the Greeks. When Alexander found out about his wisdom and spiritual power, he sent one of his associates for the ascetic, but he impartially replied that it was the Greek king who wanted to meet, not him. So Alexander could come to him himself. Alexander agreed and went to the ascetics' forest retreat. Their conversations and discussions about the nature of life and the universe were documented by later authors. According to these testimonies, Alexander was pleasantly surprised to learn from the yogi about the futility of material success and wealth, and that pure knowledge is the only basis for all happiness. He convinced Kalanos to go with him and become his teacher. The old yogi agreed and went with the Greek commander to Persia. There, for some reason, and probably considering his advanced age, Kalanos decided to burn himself in a sacred fire and thus extinguish his life. This was exactly the incident that we discussed above, and which contradicts the philosophy of the Jain ascetics, who consider even killing insects to be a heinous crime, and therefore, of course, would not light a fire to take their own lives. For this purpose, Jains usually perform a ritual called salyana, which consists of slowly giving up food in order to starve to death. According to this logic, Kalanos could not possibly be a Jain. He entered the fire without flinching or being afraid, and even engulfed in flames, he did not utter a single cry. Alexander and his soldiers watched the burning of Kalanos in a daze. They could not imagine the mystical power of this simple ascetic who burned without pain and with a smile. Kalanos gave all his modest possessions to these soldiers before being burned. But most importantly, he made an indelible impression on the minds of these Western invaders with his teachings and strength of character. There was something else that suggests that the yogi was not just an ascetic, but quite possibly possessed siddhas, yogic superpowers, such as the gift of clairvoyance. Remember this, please. Towards the conclusion of this video, I'll tell you my opinion. The chronicles note that while burning at the stake, Kalanos calmly looked at Alexander and announced that he would soon meet him in Babylon. Soon after, Alexander mysteriously died in Babylon, while still in the prime of life, thereby making Kalanos a mystic in the eyes of the Greeks, who could see the future and predicted the death of their king. Legend has it that Alexander learned from Kalanos about Dandamis, the guru of all the gymnosophists of India at that time. The name Dandamis could be a Greek way to pronounce the Indian name Dandiswami. But all this is but a guess. Whatever his name was, this naked philosopher also impressed Alexander with his philosophies and carefree attitude to life. The conqueror of the world who knew no fear, the one who destroyed and burned cities to the ground, the one whose name struck terror into the hearts of the bravest people of many countries, was defeated in a confrontation with several naked ascetics. This was the case with Dandiswami. According to legend, the discussion between Alexander and Dandamis was as exciting as his military clashes. Alexander tried to seduce the ascetic with all his riches and splendor, which the ascetic only laughed at. Dandamis told him that all these material things were like stones to him, and his true pleasure was in gaining eternal existence and knowledge. Dandamis told him that all these material things were like stones to him. He underscored it. When Alexander tried to scare him by saying that if he did not go with him, his head would be cut off, Dandamis laughed at the threat again, saying that Alexander could kill his body but not his soul, and that only Brahman is the true protector and ruler of all hearts and souls. The contrast between a world-conquering commander and the king dressed in gold and diamonds, and a naked ascetic lying under a tree in the bosom of nature, became a revelation for the Greeks that the real strength lies not in wealth or military power, but in the search for knowledge and wisdom. So the term gymnosophist was used by Plutarch in the 1st century Common Era when describing an encounter by Alexander the Great with 10 gymnosophists near the banks of the Indus River in what is now Pakistan. Plutarch was a Greek Middle Platonist philosopher, historian, biographer, essayist, and priest at the Temple of Apollo in Delphi. He is known primarily for his Parallel Lives, a series of biographies of illustrious Greeks and Romans, and Moralia, a collection of essays and speeches. Upon becoming a Roman citizen, he was most likely named Lucius Mestrius Plutarchus. Here's what he wrote. He, Alexander, captured 10 of the gymnosophists who had done most to get Sabas to revolt and had made the most trouble for the Macedonians. These philosophers were reputed to be clever and concise in answering questions, and Alexander therefore put difficult questions to them, declaring that he would put to death he who first made an incorrect answer, and then the rest, in order determined in like manner. And he commanded one of them, the oldest, to be the judge of the contest. The first one, accordingly, being asked which in his opinion were more numerous, the living or the dead, said that the living were, since the dead no longer existed. The second, being asked whether the earth or the sea produced large animals, said the earth did, since the sea was but a part of the earth. The third, being asked what animal was the most cunning, said that which up to this time man has not discovered. The fourth, when asked why he had induced Sabas to revolt, replied, because I wish him either to die nobly or live. The fifth, being asked which in his opinion was older, day or night, replied, day by 1 day. And he added, upon the king expressing dissatisfaction, that unusual questions must have unusual answers. Passing on then to the sixth, Alexander asked how a man could be most loved if, said the philosopher, he is most powerful and yet does not inspire fear. Of the three remaining, he who was asked how one might become a god instead of man replied, by doing something which a man cannot do. The one who was asked which was the stronger, life or death, answered, life, since it supports so many ills. And the last asked how long it were well for a man to live, answered, until he does not regard death as better than life. So then, turning to the judge, Alexander bade him give his opinion. The judge declared that they had answered one worse than another. Well then, said Alexander, thou shalt die first for giving such a verdict. That cannot be, O king, said the judge, unless thou falsely said that thou wouldst put to death first him who answered the worst. These philosophers then he, Alexander, dismissed with gifts. This is again from Plutarch, Life of Alexander, from the book Parallel Lives. Kalanos and Dandamis were the first to introduce the West to the true ancient Indian philosophy and spirit, and this eventually influenced the philosophy of the West. Greece was the cradle of various schools of philosophy in ancient times, and it was something incredible for the Greeks to meet another school in the East. The Western perception of India was largely shaped by Alexander and his people's encounters with the naked yogis, whoever they were. And since then, India has become associated with mysticism and as a land full of incredible wonders. Anyway, as Kalanos predicted, Alexander the Great died in Babylon around 323 before Common Era, at a very young age, while on his way back to his homeland. Alexander's death is still shrouded in mystery. Some believe that he was poisoned. Others suggest that his health was undermined by the wounds he received during such a long campaign. Others believe that the commander was struck down by an unknown Eastern disease which caused his death. Whatever the reason, the naked Indian philosophers were not mistaken in predicting that all people eventually, no matter how big, rich or poor they are, will one day equally turn to dust. And perhaps that was the simple and great moral. But now, a little more about the Sidha. The Sidha system of medicine, traditional Tamil system of medicine, which has been prevalent in ancient Tamil land, is the foremost of all other medical systems in the world, according to some people at least. Its origin goes back to 10,000, from 10,000 before Common Era to 4,000 before Common Era. As per the textual and archaeological evidences, which indicate the remote antiquity of the Dravidian civilization under erstwhile submerged land Kumari Kandam, that is the Lemuria continent situated in the Indian Ocean. The Sidha system of medicine is contemporaneous with those of the submerged lands and ancient Egyptian, Mesopotamian, Chinese, and Greek medicines. The root of the ancient Sidha system are intertwined with the mythology and culture of the ancient Tamil civilization that existed in the southernmost tip of the Indian peninsula, predating much of the recorded history. Mythically, the origin of Sidha is attributed to Shiva, or as they say, Lord Shiva, who is supposed to have handed it down to his consort Parvati, Shakti, who in turn passed on the sacred knowledge to Nandi, from whom it was transmitted to the first of Sidars. Sidha is a Tamil word derived from siddhi, obtaining perfection in life or heavenly bliss. The system is said to have emerged in antiquity from the highly evolved consciousness of the Sidars. The clarified intellect and heightened intuition of the Sidars, resulting from their yogic powers, enable them to explore the world around them and exploit its natural resources for the sake of humanity. Their findings on the characteristics of plants, metals, minerals, and animal products, and their knowledge of the properties of drugs, its purification, processing, fixing dosage, toxicity, antidote, and clinical application were preserved in the form of verses for the use of the posterity. The contributors of the Sidha system, the Sidars of Tamil land, were mystics, yogis, poets, devotees, seers, and medical men of various combinations and various statures. I think this is whom Alexander the Great encountered. That's a little bit more. They were described as superhuman beings who possessed supernatural powers, like 8 types of siddhis, and I'll get to that. They were the greatest scientists of ancient times and were the guardians of the world, and they existed and still exist for the benefit of the public at large. They were men of great practical knowledge and wisdom. They had full awareness of the nature and activities of all the objects on this planet and of all times, past, present, and future. So what are those 8 types? Ashta Siddhi are the 8 divine knowledge that gives one complete power over each and everything. They are mentioned in Hindu scriptures and texts. However, the average person may not know about the siddhis unless you are immersed in Hindu religious knowledge. And I'm not. I'm just getting information that I find through my research. But I want to share it with you. Hindu scriptures say that the people who have complete control over the siddhis can gain power of demigods. As the name itself says Ashta, which means 8 in Sanskrit, the Ashta siddhis are Anima, Mahima, Garima, Lagima, Prapti, Prakamya, Isitva, Vasitva. Each siddhi governs certain character or certain aspect of nature, and mastering each gives one distinct ability unique to other siddhis. Anima. Anima is the first among the Ashta siddhis. Mastering this siddhi gives the individual the ability to shrink down one's body. This siddhi gives only the ability to shrink the body. The owner of the siddhi can shrink the body to his own will, even at the atomic scale, but cannot increase the size of the body. Mahima. Mahima, one of Ashta siddhi, grants the user the ability to attain gigantic forms. It is like anima, or it completes anima siddhi. Anima lets you shrink your body, while Mahima lets you increase the size of the body, even to the celestial level. Garima. Garima siddhi lets user to alter the weight of their body. However, like the relation between Anima and Mahima, Garima only allows the user to increase the weight, but not decrease it. By this siddhi, one can increase his or her weight from a little bit to infinitely, to the point one becomes immovable. Lagima. Lagima of Asta siddhi is the opposite to Garima, allows its user to decrease the body weight. This siddhi decreases the weight of the user so much that the user will get the ability to fly. The weight can decrease so much that the individual can be light as a feather and gain levitation. In Hindu religion, Lord Hanuman and various other demigods, demons, knew this siddhi and were able to fly in the sky. Prapti. Prapti is very different from previous siddhis. While the previous siddhis focused on one's body, Prapti focuses on things outside of the body. Prapti siddhi gives one ability to instantly get the things they desire. The siddhi users can get anything they desire out of thin air. Various gods, demons, demigods had this ability in the ancient Hindu stories. The gods granted boon by making gifts out of thin air. Demons made weapons out of nowhere. Prakamya. Prakamya siddhi provides a wide range of abilities to its user. It allows its user to increase their life length dramatically, teleportation, and ability to live underwater. In the general sense, Prakamya enables the users to adapt to the circumstances. Various Rishi Munis, Chiranjeevis, and demigods had this Ascetics in the past, as they could live underwater and extend their lives to an exceptionally long time. Isitva, the individual obtaining this Ascetics, gets the ability to influence the nature as per one's will. When someone attains this siddhi, the earth will move per his or her wish. The sky will rain as one's demand. The wind will move as his or her sign. Every natural phenomenon will answer to one's will. Various peoples had Isitva power. They could make tree grow instantly, rain down immediately, and other many things. Vasitva, the lust of Ascetics, allows the user to control other people's minds. The ability is not limited only to people's minds, but to animals' mind also. This ability can tame wild animals, mentally disturbed individuals. Can you imagine the powers that these siddhis give to the trained individuals? And do you think that there are no people out there who would still look for the ability to have such powers? Here's another opinion. In Indian religions, by the way, a rishi is an accomplished and enlightened person. They find mention in various Vedic texts. Siddhis are a reality, and the science behind them has been passed down from time immemorial by the rishis and preserved in the Vedic texts. In actuality, nothing is mystic. Everything functions according to natural laws. The rishis, by virtue of their expanded consciousness, understood the functionings of matter on the subtle levels of sound and mind. They actually understood the absolute laws of nature and not just the surfacial reactions caused by mixing gross physical elements. True transcendentalists have no interest in mundane material life. As such, the rishis did not give much importance to material powers and perfections. They were not interested in acquiring wealth, power, fame, and so forth. Their aim was much higher. Alexander the Great had other aims, and ultimately he perished. This is what I wanted to let you know today. I will bring more of the knowledge of ancient India, and you can find in my videos produced before some of the knowledge that Ivan Yefremov had. Who knows how? I mean, this was not his area of expertise, so to say, but at the same time, he had a powerful knowledge. He brought knowledge of ancient civilizations, incredible powers they possessed, very unusual devices. You can find it in my videos. I'll tell you more in the future, like I said. And if you like my research, please kindly support me through the links you'll find in description to this video. Please tell others about my work. Please like my videos, subscribe to my channel. And I gotta tell you, there are so many interesting things out there, incredible things. And I think more will be found with advance of archaeology, of course. And people should look at ancient knowledge without awe or anything like that, but with, of course, amazement and desire to learn. Thank you.